Hi, my name is Jessica, a 30-year-old office worker. My career has always been my priority, but starting in my late 20s, it seemed like all my friends began getting married one after the other. There were times when the cost of wedding gifts significantly impacted my budget, leaving me with a sense of urgent concern. I began to explore dating, and during every visit home, my dad, Marion, would press, "Jessica, when are you going to give me grandkids?" This insistence made me increasingly uncomfortable, leading me to reduce my visits. My mom passed away when I was young, so I was raised by my dad, my brother, and my paternal grandparents. My brother married early, building a house close to where we grew up. He has 2 daughters, my adorable nieces. I've got cute nieces at my brother's place. Isn't that enough for you? But for you, Jessica, it never seemed sufficient, and it always sparked an argument. Then my dad was involved in a traffic accident and was in a very bad state by the time I reached the hospital. My energetic father passed away quietly while my brother's family and I were by his side. "Dad, I had someone I wanted you to meet." At that time, a friend had introduced me to a boyfriend, Patrick, who had just proposed, and we decided to marry. He was somewhat of a show-off but a kind man. Now, with both my parents gone and my brother having his own family, I felt the loneliness keenly. "It's gotten lonely, hasn't it?" I muttered, stroking my cat, Jackie, after returning from the funeral. "Jessica, you're not alone. You're going to be a part of my family," Patrick said, sitting next to me and gently holding my hand. He had come to check on me, concerned about my well-being. "Let's build a happy home together," I thought, believing I could achieve ordinary happiness without realizing what the future held. Welcome, though it's a bit cramped. I visited Patrick's family home for a meeting. Veronica, his mother, spoke plainly and was full of energy. As I entered, expecting only the in-laws, I hesitated, finding the room crowded with them, step-grandparents, Patrick's brother Wilson, his wife Edwina, and their kids, Taylor and Mark. "Oh, nice to meet you." "Wow, that's a lot of people." The house, built by Alvin, Patrick's father, was old and somewhat run-down, but the family's warm welcome eased my nerves. On the drive back, I remarked on the day's crowded gathering, suggesting how Christmas or Thanksgiving must be quite the event. Patrick laughed, agreeing, "It's really cramped. I can't believe they managed to live like that every day." I was surprised. I had thought Patrick's family home was never spacious, assuming today's gathering was temporary. 8 people in that house. Wow, that's something, Patrick noted. Originally, it was just the 4 of them, his in-laws and step-grandparents. But then Wilson, unable to hold down a job, moved in one day with Edwina and their kids without asking. "Wilson will probably move out once he finds a stable job," Patrick said, laughing. Then, I just thought that Patrick's family had its challenges, nothing more. After marriage, Patrick and I, along with our cat Jackie, lived a peaceful life without kids. Patrick was fairly helpful around the house, and Jackie was fond of us. As for his family, Wilson and his family were still living in that house. The walls were covered in children's scribbles, and Veronica laughed, saying she gave up on cleaning them long ago. Edwina, Wilson's wife, always looked tired. She was older than Wilson and close to my age, so we became friends quickly. "Hey, Edwina, hurry up. Jessica, don't just stand there, we're out of beer." Whenever I visited, it seemed like Edwina and I were the only ones not sitting down. We were constantly busy, and I wondered if this was our fate. But the thought of Edwina doing this every day was unhappily frightening. Edwina worked full-time, filling in for Wilson, who hardly worked. I hesitated to ask, but finally did. "Have you ever thought about leaving him?" "I've heard that before. Well, it's tough as it is, but we have kids, and he used to be so kind." I couldn't see any good in Wilson, but I guess they had their reasons. That's what I thought. It was around this time that Patrick suddenly suggested, "How about we build our own house?" I was surprised, but also happy. Actually, I've had a small dream since I was little. I'd always dreamed of living in a quaint house like those in storybooks, with a white dog in the yard. I've never told anyone, but when I shared the dream with Patrick, a bit shyly, he said, "That sounds great." We spent our free days visiting model homes, choosing a housemaker, and a year later, our dream home was completed. "We've got to make sure we keep up with the mortgage," Patrick said. "Absolutely," I replied with a smile. On the first weekend after moving in, Patrick's family came over for a housewarming party. "Here, Donald, hand over the gift. We're coming in." Oh, what a lovely house. Veronica seemed quite pleased, as if it was her own home. I smiled politely. "Look, it's a celebration." And then Donald handed me 2 cans of beer, looking like he'd just bought them. I mean, seriously. Wilson wandered around the house and, finding our bedroom, exclaimed, "Oh, this bed is super comfy." Saying that, Wilson started rolling around on the bed. The kids, following their father's lead, got excited. "Look, there's a cat." They ran around, chasing our pet cat, Jackie. Jackie is friendly, but had never met so many people at once, so she got scared and hid in the back of the room. Poor Jackie. I glanced at Wilson and Patrick, who had already started a party with the in-laws. "Jessica, Veronica is insisting on appetizers quickly. Can I use your kitchen?" "And sorry about scaring Jackie," Edwina said apologetically. Why is someone as nice as her with a guy like that? I had grown to care for Edwina like a real sister. "I'll handle it, Edwina. You relax," I said, but she still helped with the cooking. While managing the kids, the step-grandparents were always quiet, almost like dolls, not talking much. "What a lovely home, right, Alvin?" "Yeah, sorry for the noise," Alvin replied. Even though the loud ones were the in-laws, the step-grandparents were the ones with common sense in that house. In other words, the odd ones out were the in-laws, Wilson, and probably my husband, Patrick, too. From then on, the in-laws and Wilson would visit our house almost every weekend. They partied till dawn, so loud that we received complaints from neighbors and even the police. The step-grandparents, Edwina, and the kids hadn't visited our house since the house warning, but the in-laws didn't hesitate to put me to work. I was at my wits' end. Patrick had also started showing his true colors. Once, when I had a cold and was too weak to prepare dinner, I asked Patrick, who was home early from work, to pick something up. He came back with 2 hamburgers. I couldn't even think of eating them. "Why hamburgers?" "I can't eat this right now," I said without thinking. Instead of getting angry, Patrick retorted, "What are you talking about, Jessica? You need to eat to get your strength back." What if I had the energy to eat that? I wouldn't have asked for help in the first place, I thought to myself. By the way, when Patrick was sick once, I sarcastically asked if he wanted a hamburger. His response was, "No, that's ridiculous. Are you trying to annoy me?" That's what I said. In short, this family was self-centered and lacked empathy. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. I'll make sure you all get what you deserve, I thought, smirking wickedly. A few days later, I had a business trip scheduled. On the morning of my departure, I cheerfully said to Patrick, "Well, I'm off then." "Was your business trip starting today?" "What a coincidence. Edwina is also on a business trip from today," said Patrick. "Really, I had no idea." "What a coincidence," I replied. "Mom said they'd be in trouble without someone to take care of the house." Patrick laughed mockingly, making me think, what a jerk. I was busy during my time away from home. Days flew by quickly, and before I knew it, a lot of time had passed. A major typhoon hit, and I contacted Patrick. "We're fine, but the family home had some serious leaks," he replied. Thinking of the old family home, I felt it was understandable. The day I returned home arrived. As I walked from the nearest bus stop to my house, I heard loud, unrefined laughter echoing in the residential area. Is someone having a barbecue in their yard? The noise was that loud. This will surely attract complaints from the neighbors. Wait, what? I was shocked. The loud voices were unmistakably coming from my house. As I cautiously opened the door, I found many bags in the entrance, and the walls were covered in graffiti. Stunned, I was at a loss for words. "Hey, Jessica, welcome back." A drunken Patrick greeted me, frustrating me with his insensitivity. I entered the living room to find the equally drunk in-laws and Wilson, with someone making appetizers for them in the kitchen. The step-grandparents were quiet as usual, and the kids were happily drawing on the living room walls. Then, there was another young woman I didn't know. Overwhelmed by everything, I felt my mind about to snap. What is all this? I asked Patrick calmly, trying not to get emotional. Didn't I tell you the family home had leaks because of the typhoon? I heard that part. And then Patrick's story was this. The family home had a massive leak, and the in-laws, having nowhere else to go, temporarily moved into our house without Edwina, who was away. We thought, why don't we live here? Patrick said proudly. Even with this explanation, I was baffled. To my silence, they added, smiling, "It's fine. We're family. We have extra rooms, no problem." "It's all right, Jessica. The walls got a bit dirty, but it's just kid stuff," Wilson said nonchalantly. "And who is that woman?" I asked, referring to the woman lounging on the sofa, fiddling with her phone. "Oh, that's Karen, a mutual friend of me and Edwina, right?" Wilson asked her. "Yeah, that's right," she answered with a smile. Karen was kicked out by her parents, and Patrick said it was okay for her to stay. "Thanks in advance," the not-so-bright-looking girl replied, leaving me utterly confused. In our not-so-spacious living room, there were 9 adults and 2 children. The room was a mess, the walls covered in scribbles, making it look nothing like a new house. The family was loud, like a dormitory. I couldn't help but lose my temper. Seriously, 9 people is too many. Are you guys planning to start a baseball team or what? Then I realized something. Hey, where's Jackie? Our pet cat Jackie was nowhere to be found. When I asked Patrick and the others, they all claimed ignorance while frantically searching for Jackie. Lucy, a dad, opened the window to smoke, and she ran away, Taylor told me. Wilson glared at the boy as if he had said something he shouldn't have. "What were you thinking?" "I told you to be careful with the windows," I said, near tears. Patrick, looking annoyed, said, "Oh, come on, it's just a cat. We can get another one. What's with you? If you're unhappy, we can just get divorced, you know." He said it with such a disdainful face. "You just said divorce?" I asked. "Yeah, I did. I might consider not doing it if you apologize to us." Patrick, along with the in-laws and Wilson, seemed confident that I wouldn't go through with the divorce. I replied, "Oh, really? Well then, here, write this." I slammed down the divorce papers I had prepared. My section was already filled out. I fetched my pre-packed bags from my room. "Why haven't you written it yet?" "I'm busy, you know," and said coolly to Patrick. They were all shocked by my preparedness. Angrily, Veronica said, "Patrick, divorce this woman already. We've built the house, so she's useless now." Veronica said that, realizing too late. Right. Jessica, you'll regret divorcing." "Me? But I had no regrets." "What are you talking about? You're the one who's going to struggle. Just write the divorce papers." Once Patrick finished writing, I snatched the papers and put them in my bag. Then I went to Wilson and said, "Here, you need to write this too," handing him the divorce papers. He laughed. "What? When did I marry you?" Looking at the filed and wife's section, Wilson said, "Hey, Edwina, this is..." Edwina coldly stared at Wilson and said, "I'm divorcing you right now, please." To which Wilson exclaimed, "Edwina, bite the hand that feeds you, huh?" Donald was talking nonsense. From my perspective, Edwina had been living like a slave in her in-laws' house. The money she earned was mostly taken by Wilson, leaving only a little for living expenses. The money let Wilson do whatever he wanted, and the not-so-bright girl in front of me, she was Wilson's mistress. "Jessica, I think my husband is cheating on me." Edwina had confided in me just before Patrick suggested building a house. Edwina had been enduring it all for the sake of her children, but recently, Wilson had even started selling Edwina's belongings and the kids' toys for his own gain. She had reached her limit. Then, Edwina told me a story. After hearing Edwina's story, I was furious. From that day, Edwina and I started planning our divorces. Edwina gathered thorough evidence of the affair. Her recent business trip was a lie. We met halfway to look for a new place to live. Like me, Edwina's parents had passed away, and she had no relatives to turn to. However, a close friend offered her a job at their shop in another state. It was a good location, and our preparations went smoothly. All that was left was to present the divorce papers. I want to get some people out of that hellish house. Edwina had made up her mind and was incredibly strong. She had a strong core, but had been used by her in-laws like she was brainwashed. Thinking it would look suspicious to return together, Edwina went back first. She soon contacted me, informing me about the takeover of my house and Wilson's brazen mistress moving in. All our conversations and actions until then were a performance. Knowing what was going on, I told Edwina, "We're not living in that house anymore. Let the kids draw on the walls all they want." That's what I told him. Wilson, thinking he could now openly live with his mistress, happily signed the divorce papers. "Let's go, Edwina, Alvin, and everyone. It's time to leave." The step-grandparents stood up and followed Edwina and her children to the door. Living with people like you, I had given up on life, but Edwina opened my eyes. "Do as you please now," Alvin said, glaring at the family, and left with his great-grandchildren. The in-laws had been taking money from the step-grandparents' pensions. They were truly awful people. "Well then, take care," we said as we left like a storm. "You'll regret this." The family laughed as we left, but we ignored them. Months later, Patrick contacted me. Oh, I forgot to block him. I could guess the content of the call, so I answered, "Jessica, come back." Patrick sounded desperate. I barely contained my laughter. "Come back." "We're strangers now," I replied calmly. "Let me talk, Jessica. What do you mean? Why aren't you paying the mortgage?" Veronica's voice came through, probably snatching the phone from Patrick. "What are you talking about?" "I have no idea." I played dumb, while Veronica sounded frustrated. Apparently, the house's mortgage had already fallen behind last month. When I pressed Patrick, he claimed I hadn't been paying the mortgage. What an inconvenience. While I remained silent, Veronica kept talking like a machine gun. "First of all, this house, you guys had a combined income of $860,000, right? We could have built a better house. We built this as a new home, but it's not what we expected. Originally, they had planned to take over the house. Edwina had informed me of their discussions. Yes, that's true, but with Patrick's $40,000 salary, the bank wouldn't lend us more. If we had taken a joint mortgage, maybe we could have gotten a better house." Hearing this, I thought, "Patrick, you lied." I could hear Patrick and Veronica arguing on the phone. I ignored them, ended the call, and finally blocked his number. Patrick had a pretentious personality, always wanting to impress others, especially outside his family. When he suggested building a house, I already had divorce in mind. I told him how cool it was that a friend's husband got a mortgage on his own. Hearing these stories like a spell, Patrick, wanting to show off, opted for a solo mortgage. I had to hold back my laughter. He probably didn't tell his family because he was afraid of them knowing the truth, but I didn't care. The house was built to Patrick's taste. I had no attachment to it anymore. Patrick hadn't cheated, but there were no alimony or penalties in our divorce. So, to spite him, I left him with the mortgage debt as my revenge. Let him suffer, and I was able to rescue Edwina, whom I cared for her like a sister. Rescuing Edwina from that house was my main goal. Later, they couldn't pay the mortgage, and the new house was repossessed. But it was a mess inside, with scribbles everywhere and walls yellowed by cigarette smoke from Wilson and his mistress. It didn't look like a recently built house. Patrick had to rent a cheap apartment, and Donald and Veronica ended up moving in with him. They'll probably never leave him alone, like parasites. I don't care. They're strangers to me now. The only good thing about my former in-laws was that the children weren't affected. Otherwise, they were the worst. Edwina, as Wilson's ex-wife, successfully claimed alimony through a lawyer. She had to borrow money, but managed to pay it off. I'm glad for her. Wilson and his mistress became outcasts in their community and are now missing. They haven't repaid their debts, confirming how awful they are. Edwina is happily working at her friend's place. Her kids are doing well too. I hope they find happiness this time. Alvin and Kimberly seem brighter now, like a weight has been lifted. They sold the old family home and are enjoying their retirement in a distant place with their savings. That's great news. As for me, I've requested a transfer to a local office. I was reunited with Jackie, my cat, thanks to social media. Someone in the neighborhood had found and taken care of her. It's good she's friendly. Now, I live alone in my late father's house with my brother's approval. I'm saving to build my dream house, and someday, I hope to introduce someone special at my father's grave. Today, I'm working hard towards that goal.